So just sort of to review what you were currently working on the math section, thinking about the TEKS, and I'm going to go to the TEKS. No, Marco. I think actually my dog, I'm going to probably take him out right now, but going through the TEKS, there's a primary focal point for the lower grade, for all of them, honestly, but for the lower grade levels, and it's for a reason. We're teaching them math concepts and skills in this very strategic way. So this is first grade, and they are understanding place value. This comes so much into play with what I'm going to show you later. So place value, solving problems with addition and subtraction, all that stuff. Make sure that you have gone through the TEKS and that you have a solid understanding, like, okay, first grade is about place value. Kindergarten in math, it's mostly about cardinality, number sense, and understanding that addition is putting together and subtraction is like less than or taking apart. So having a general understanding, but the ways in which they build that, the place value system, the primary focus of grade 2, making comparisons, it's the primary focus within the base 10 value system. The value system is going to be very, very important because a lot of our manipulatives rely on their understanding of place value system. The strategy that is in the TEKS for them to do multiplication utilizes the place value system. Now, I did not know that until I started teaching math to teachers, like going through the TEKS and teaching math to the teachers. But my 3 older kids, I have 5, but so my oldest one is graduated. He's 20. One graduates this year and is a senior, and one is a freshman of the older group, right? And then I have a first and a second grader. But for my older kids, I remember when they were in school, and like I learned multiplication differently, and they would have homework assignments. And since I'm a good parent, I would make them do that. And I would also check it. And if they needed help, they would come to me. And for math specifically, and I feel so bad now, I have to apologize to each of them individually, but they would say, Mom, we have to do the box method. And I would say, I didn't know what the box method was. I did not know. It wasn't taught to us that way. And it honestly is so much easier and you could do any big math problem, multiplication, division with the box method so easily without a computer. It's just, wow. But I didn't know it. And so I remember specifically being annoyed and telling like my oldest, who's 20, math is math, babe. Like we figured it out utilizing multiplication. Like I don't know what the box method is, and your teacher's just going to have to deal with it. But the reason the teacher was saying you must use the box method is because it is in the TEKS. Therefore, it is the law, and it is something that they'll be questioned on. So let me just go show you what the box method is. Have you seen it already? Did you watch it in any of the videos?
Yes, I actually did watch that one.
Yes, good. I'm so glad. So I don't have to show it to you. But so you know why we place this importance on their understanding of the base system and number sense, because many of the things that we're going to teach them to do, the skills they need to do later in math, they need a solid understanding of that, just back and forth, where 52 times 48 isn't just a 5 and a 2. That 5 stands for 50, and the 2 is 2 single units. So having them understand that with all their numbers so that they can apply those strategies and do it effectively. So I'm so glad that you watched that. Excellent, excellent. Let's go to social studies. So when you're doing your studying, you need to make sure that you chunk the text and that you can generalize. You can say to yourself, like, kindergarten is mostly about this. So we're going to read the first paragraph, the introduction, and we're going to chunk the text. We're going to, in our own words together, say what it's mostly about. So in kindergarten, the study of self, home, family, and classroom establishes the foundation of for responsible citizenship in society. Students explore state and national heritage by examining the celebration of patriotic holidays and the contributions of individuals. The concept of chronology is introduced. Students apply geographic concepts of location, physical and human characteristics of place. Students identify basic human needs and ways people meet these needs. Students learn the purpose of rules and the roles of an authority figure in the home and at school. Students learn customs, symbols, celebrations, and represent American beliefs and principles and contribute to our national identity. Students compare family customs and traditions and describe examples of technology in the home and school. Students acquire information from a variety of oral and visual sources. Why do you think it's mostly oral and visual? Michaela?
Maybe because it's like going into the way the student is like with their family.
Right, but also what grade level are they?
Kinder, so they're
Right.
little.
They're little, like maybe a couple of them, if they had superstar parents that started them on like, phonemic awareness early in reading skills, maybe. Most of them can't read. So the bulk of our instruction for kindergarten is going to be oral and visual in nature. Certainly we're going to be introducing text, reinforcing it and whatnot, but the bulk of their acquisition of knowledge at this level is oral and visual. And that is true for all of your content areas within the core, right? For kindergartner, right? If you're going to be doing science, it's not like you're going to give them an article and say, okay, guys, read this article and then just think, pair, share with your partner. Like they can't do that. So our activities and our planning has to still get them to acquire the knowledge that they need orally and visually. So what would we say kindergarten is mostly about? If you had to generalize what the focus of social studies was for kindergarten, what would you say, Michaela? And there was a lot of different things in there, but let's try to, generalize it and say, this is what they're trying to do with kindergarten and the ways that they do it.
Maybe with like it's about like where like the students, I don't know how to say it.
It's okay that you're coming up, you're doing metacognition, thinking about your thinking about your reading, but out loud. So that sometimes that's, uncomfortable, but
Yes, what I'm trying to say is like it's about like their background knowledge.
right, building on their background knowledge, connecting and having them understand society, right? Because it's self, home, family. Then we have patriotic holidays, geographic concepts, physical and human characteristics of a place, right? So that's still society. So I think a good way of thinking about kindergarten is it lays the groundwork. So social studies is a study of society, really past, present, and future. So having them understand the nuance of society, authority figures, rules, holidays, differences of place and location and people and holidays, but also connections and ways in which they're alike, and all via visual and oral, mostly. So if you look down here and you see names, like the strands remain the same. Throughout social studies, this is another paragraph, and these paragraphs stay the same except for like the beginning part that tells you in fourth grade, Texas history, social studies focus is Texas history, like early Texas history, which is why I call fourth grade Texas history light, because seventh graders get again seventh history focus, but it's like a little bit darker. It's a deeper, darker dive into Texas history. Fourth grade is the prerequisite. It precedes and should lay the foundation for seventh grade later. So you have Throughout social studies in kindergarten through 12, which is EC through 12, early child to 12, students build a foundation in history, the first strand right here, history. Oh my Lord, I am so sorry. Can I answer this just really quickly?
Yes, of course.
Because if not, it'll show that I didn't on the system and I hate it when
Mm-hmm.
Hello, this is Miss Sauceda. Yes, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I'm actually giving a session. I just didn't want to let it go to record, and I wanted to let you know that I will call you back as soon as it's over. Okay, I'll send you a text message when we're done. Just send me a text because I'll get it here. Thank you so much. I apologize. It's just the system will say like declined or whatever. And I'm like, no, I did not. I'm busy. I'm working. So yes, the strands, they remain the same. And that's what vertical alignment is. It means that we're focused vertically, but on the different steps of the ladder going up, there's different things we're building, different knowledge concepts and different skills that have been each strategically placed in order to create a solid foundation with which to build all the way up to 12th grade. So the strands are history, geography, economics, government, citizenship, culture, science and technology, and social studies skills. Those are the strands, and they remain constant. Now, it's going to be different. They're going to be different knowledge concepts with each grade level. For instance, we're talking about kindergarten right now. We know we're not going to get into the specifics of wars or battles or famines or anything like that. We're literally laying the foundations here of society. What is an authority figure? Self, home, family. In your family, who's an authority figure on this campus? Who is the authority figure? And they'll say the principal or, the police officer. They'll start to play with these ideas to understand and lay the groundwork for later on. So we have history here, and then it tells you here, history again. The student understands how historical figures help shape the state and the nation. So that's what they need to be able to do. They have to understand how these people that are specifically listed here help shape the state and the nation. And so when you do your studying for your core area and they list a specific name or a specific date, event, time period, then you need to do an investigation if you don't know yourself how they helped shape the state and the nation. For instance, Stephen F. Austin. And in one of my videos for this, we actually look up Stephen F. Austin, which is why I now know and can tell you off the top of my head orally, which is the best sort of measure. If you can explain to someone orally, that means you know it. If you can say it to somebody, and you'll have to say it to your students, then that means that you know it. So a good practice for you as you're studying these things, like for instance, you were talking about math a little while ago, which is what we started with. You were talking about needing to memorize those formulas, right? And the metrics, right? You're not going to have a very easy like conversion chart if they give you something having to do with, metrics. So you need to have that in your brain already. So certainly you would want to write it down, draw some pictures, make it colorful, and then as much as possible, try to talk about it with people. If you're married or you have a partner or you have children, say, did you know that the equation for, the area of a triangle is this? And then you say it to them a million times. You need to use it and have it be working knowledge. When we read something, sorry. The
It's
student
okay.
expected to identify contributions of historical figures. So Stephen F. Austin, he is credited with being like the father of Texas, because he brought settlers, a group of settlers, and they came here, and it was the beginnings of Texas, and that's what we credit him with. And so I knew about him. I didn't know he was considered the father of Texas, but we need to understand the names and the figures, but not just know them, because that would be too arbitrary. Like, oh, George Washington, there's so much about George Washington. There's a lot about Stephen F. Austin, but we want to know specifically, how did they help like shape the state? And Stephen F. Austin, we know how he helped shape the state and the nation. The student is expected to, let's see, spatial terms used, including over, under, near, far, left, and right, to describe relative location. So getting them to understand, because they're going to have to use maps, and they're going to, I mean, they need to understand that, and they need to understand it as far as like with respect to what we're talking about. And so in all areas, but especially with respect to social studies, getting them to understand spatially what these things mean, and then to a relative location, you know, like Mexico is under and to the side of Texas, you know, and then having them spatially think about where things are based on location. These are things that the kindergartners have to do, and it goes all the way down to social studies skills. Social studies skills are things that have to be applied every single lesson, every lesson. So if you are doing, let's go back up here to, because your TEKS are where you get your objectives for your lesson, right? This is where every teacher comes to get the objective for the lesson, especially if you are a teacher who gives an exam. Then you are looking at your TEKS all the time, and you probably have them memorized for your grade level, for sure you do, especially after years. And the thing with this, and why this exam is so hard, Michaela, is because you have to know so incredibly much, remember so much for this exam. That doesn't mean you will always have to retain that information always. You will not teach all the grade levels and even all the content areas, right? Sometimes I have an intern and they're assigned, like they might be the reading and science teacher or the reading and math teacher, and they switch classes or whatever, but you focus on one particular grade level TEKS and one, you know, you have a little bit more, not normally EC through 6, but typically I see it a little bit more with the some of the older levels, 4 through 8. But we have to, for the purposes of this exam, at least have a working knowledge that you can do, and that you know the things that the students have to know, and that you can do the things that they have to do. So if they have to identify why Stephen F. Austin matters for Texas, then you do too, specifically, not all the other stuff, who he married, when he died, blah, blah, blah. How did he help shape the state? So that's how you have to think of when you are going through these. A lot of students get super overwhelmed with the TEKS. They see all these names and dates. They're like, oh my God, how am I going to remember all this stuff? You don't have to remember everything about all of them. You have to make sure you know what the students have to know, and that you can do what the students are going to be asked to do, because this is where they get your questions from for the exam, right? From this piece of legislature, I should say. Social studies skills, they have to be utilized in all of your lessons. So even if you're focusing on Stephen F. Austin and how he impacted Texas, you always have to be thinking about gathering information about a topic using a variety of valid oral and visual sources, sequence and categorize information. You have to be practicing these skills with each of the knowledge concepts and other skills that are listed in the TEKS, practicing the social studies skills. And it says in the, where is it at? Here it is. The 8 strands of essential knowledge and skills for social studies are intended to be integrated for instructional purposes. Skills listed in the social studies skills strand in subsection B of this section should be incorporated into the teaching of all essential knowledge concepts and skills for social studies. So that small little chunk at the end has to be applied and dispersed and reapplied and dispersed on the daily basis, building those social studies skills that will help them to be able to understand the other content, essential knowledge and skills. So do you know Jose Antonio Navarro and how they helped shape the state and nation, Michaela? I don't. So I'm asking
No,
you honestly. So let's look it
no,
up.
I don't.
You don't either. Good. So we'll look it up together. And the internet makes it so easy for us to be able to, and I'm just going to place it in here. Tejano Heroes. You can look at it. KSAT. That's a good source. But let's do this because it's specific to Texas. I mean, I know KSAT is San Antonio.
Jose Antonio Navarro was born on February 27, 1795, to Josefa Maria Ruiz y Peña and Angel Navarro. He was born into a distinguished noble family at San Antonio in the Viceroyalty of New Spain. His mother was an aristocrat of a noble Spanish family, and his father was a self-made man who made himself into a successful merchant and the alcalde of San Antonio. At an early age, Navarro began to take an interest in law, including the laws of Mexico and Spain. However, his early education was rudimentary, and he often self-educated himself. During the 1810s, San Antonio was a hotbed of revolution against Spanish rule and was a scene of bloody clashes between the Spanish army and Mexican rebels. Navarro began to take an interest in the revolutionary fervor at the age of 17, when he supported and took part in the 1812-1813 Gutierrez-McGee expedition. The purpose of the expedition was to free Texas from Spanish rule. However, after a year of fighting, the expedition would end in failure. As a result, the Spanish army would take brutal reprisals upon the people of San Antonio, executing hundreds of rebel supporters. Navarro was forced to flee Texas to the United States out of fear of being executed. He would return 3 years later at the age of 21 and would begin to work with empresarios. As a native Texan, he had a vision for the future of Texas, and like many other Tejanos at the time, Navarro came to believe the best hope for Texas lay in Anglo-American colonization, to both combat raiding Native Americans and to bring prosperity and stability to the region. He developed a steady friendship with Stephen F. Austin, and with his skills in Spanish and Mexican law, he helped Austin obtain his contracts to bring settlers to Texas. Navarro later became a land commissioner for the Dewa colony, and soon after for the Bayard district. In 1825, at the age of 30, he married Margarita de la Grasa, and they raised 7 children. One of them, Jose Angel Navarro III, served 3 terms in the Texas legislature. When the early 1830s rolled around, Navarro was elected to both the Coahuila y Tejas state legislature and to the federal Congress at Mexico City. Navarro championed democratic ideas, and with the help of Austin, they worked to pass legislation that would best benefit the people of Texas. He began to support Texas statehood in Mexico in 1835, and when the Texas Revolution came along, he began to support independence. Navarro would take part in the Convention of 1836, where Texas declared her independence, and he would also sign the document, along with his uncle Jose Francisco Ruiz and Lorenzo de Zavala. He became one of the 3 Mexican signers of the Declaration of Independence, and one of just 2 native-born Tejano signers. Navarro's contemporaries later said that he trembled at the thought of the great step he had taken, but he plunged himself into a leadership role nonetheless, helping to draft the Constitution of the Republic of Texas. As the Texas Revolution continued, Navarro received news from Juan Seguin of the fall of the Alamo. With the death of James Bowie, who was Navarro's nephew by marriage, Navarro had to secure the release of the surviving Navarro family members, Juana Hetrubis Navarro and Maria Hetrubis Navarro, along with a son from Juana's first marriage. They were being held by Mexican soldiers at the McQuee's house, where they were moved to the Navarro family home, thereby avoiding humiliation or death from General Santa Anna. When the Texas Revolution came to a close and the era of the Republic of Texas began, Navarro served as Bexar County's representative to the Congress of the Republic of Texas. From the beginning, he saw that Tejanos were becoming the political minority of Texas. Attempting to keep a balance of power, he worked closely with Senator Juan Seguin to promote legislation favorable for the Tejano citizenry. Education was one such priority, and he worked to bring academic institutions to the San Antonio area. Politically, Navarro was a supporter of Mirbo B. Lamar and a critic of Sam Houston, and because of his support of Lamar, he was selected as a commissioner to accompany the Santa Fe expedition in 1841. The expedition was doomed from the start, and they would suffer Native American attacks, hunger, and thirst. When the Texan force got to Santa Fe, they were all arrested and marched to Mexico City, including Navarro as well. While most of the other prisoners were released in 1842 from Berochi prison, Navarro was instead tried and convicted of treason. Expecting to be executed, he finally managed to escape with the help from sympathetic Mexican army officials. When he returned to Texas, he indulged himself into the growing support for U.S. statehood,
All right,
being a
that's enough.
longtime
So
supporter of.
let us generalize. What did he do for Texas in general?
He helped write the Constitution.
Yep. Yeah. So you might call him one of the framers, right? Like he framed our nation by enshrining it in the Constitution, in the Texas Constitution. So now we know, and it didn't take us super, super long, and you don't have to listen to the whole thing as much as you need to answer that question. And the question was, how does he impact Texas? What was his impact for Texas? And so each of these strands through the grade levels, you got to go through, and anything that you couldn't, just like you told me right now, you just said it, you orally responded and say it to someone else. Did you know that Jose Antonio Navarro helped write the Texas Constitution? Like, say it to random people so that it stays in your brain, because speaking about it, which is why we want the students to talk about it always. Best practice for any activity, and especially if you're in kindergarten, since we're relying so heavily on oral and visual, that you have the students speak about it, talk about the things and activities that would include them speaking and talking about the things, using content specific vocabulary, academic specific vocabulary. Well, let me see, what does it say? My phone just gave me a message that I'm gonna have a session starting soon. Maybe it's a little late. Yeah, it is late because I don't have it. It just told me I had a session. It's a good thing that I came on myself. So obviously, as you go through, let's just go to third grade, and we'll see what the third grade students learn how diverse individuals have changed their communities and the world. And then fourth grade is about Texas history. So we were laying the groundwork even in kindergarten for some of their knowledge in Texas history. And you could ask them in your third grade class or your fourth grade class, does anyone know who Jose Antonio Navarro is? And they should know something and some things, because we have showed them like the people that helped build in sort of a grander, broader sense, the state that we have now. So Texas history goes into a deeper dive, but not as deep as seventh grade. So I call it Texas History Light. Fifth grade is U.S. History Light, because again, students in eighth grade get a more deeper, darker sort of study of U.S. history. So grade 5 is a prerequisite for grade 8. And they should have gained all of these knowledge, concepts, and skills, and should be ready to go, in the 8th grade, theoretically. 6th grade, you're going to have to access middle school. And that just always happens with EC through 6 and 4 through 8 as well. They have to access both the, actually it's honestly, for everyone. Because even if you're doing the secondary, you have to access middle school and secondary because it's 7 through 12. So looking at 6th grade, we see that it is world history light, right? We're hitting on the world history aspects, and always with the same 8 strands, right? History, geography, economics, government, citizenship, culture, science, technology, and society, and those social studies skills. Now let's take a look at how the social studies skills have gotten even more complex. So here, now they're applying critical thinking skills to organize and use information acquired through established research methodologies from a variety of valid sources, including technology. Differentiate between locate and use. So differentiate between valid primary and secondary sources. Locate valid primary secondary sources and use them. So all of these skills down here being embedded with the essential knowledge and skills from above. Let's go back a little bit. How do I go back? Okay, here we are. So reading through this document, I would go through each line, and you can even have like your notes to the side and write out the different sections that you have, like history, geography, government, economics, all those, and then write the main things. You don't have to write everything, because if you know it and you can say it to me orally, you don't have to write it down. You know it. The things you cannot say and you cannot sort of define or explain orally to somebody else, you need to research that essential knowledge in order to be able to do that skill, right? The skill that the student has to do. The act of you writing it down, drawing pictures, paraphrasing it, internalizes the information in your brain in a neurological pathway. Think of a brain wrinkle that gets embedded deeper. If just one reading is not enough for you to retain something internally and be able to retrieve it later for use, applying it differently. When you add the reading, your paraphrasing of the reading or restating of it, and the kinesthetic activity of writing it down, possibly drawing a visual, it does something in your brain that creates the neurological pathway, that thereby making it retrievable later. It internalizes the knowledge in ways that superficial reading just will not do. Do you have any questions for me?
No, not right now.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go so you can go do those things and start looking up those different areas. Kindergarten, first grade. What is first grade mostly about? What's the goal? And then what specifics am I unfamiliar with that I need to bulk up on so that I am familiar when I go into the exam?
Okay. I just said it's about the meetings. Was there gonna be any on the weekends?
Yeah, I can do a weekend one if you want me to. I do PPR on the weekends from 11:30 to 12. But I can do one possibly this Saturday from 1 to 2.
1 to 2. Okay. Yeah, it's only because like next week, like this week, we had Friday off, so I didn't have to work today. But like next week, I'm gonna be working all week.
Right.
And
Okay. Well,
like
then I'll save it for next Saturday. Not this
Okay,
Saturday, next
sounds
Saturday,
good.
so that you can
Okay.
log on next Saturday.
Okay, and it would be from 1 to 2.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and I will just register for it on the like the same way I registered for this one, or
I'm gonna have to put a class up, or I'll just send you the Zoom link and then you just log in at 1.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you, Michaela, for your hard
Thank
work. Continue
you.
studying. I'm telling you, go talk to people. They're gonna think you're crazy. Why do I want to know who that guy is? Why are you asking me? Like, no, I'm asking if I can tell you. But honestly, it'll make it solidify in your brain better.
Yes.
All right. Well, you have a beautiful rest of your day off and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.